Ladies and gentlemen, get ready to embark on a journey like no other. Welcome to the Glum Lot Podcast,
your go-to destination for a unique blend of recovery and discovery.
I'm Brett.
And I'm Mark. And in this podcast, we will endeavor to create a safe and uplifting space for our guests and listeners to share their stories with sincerity and a touch of humor.
Remember, we are not a Glum Lot. The Glum Lot Podcast is more than just a source of entertainment. It's a beacon of hope, proving that even in the darkest moments, recovery is possible. Every story we share carries the power to inspire positive change.
So buckle up, get ready to listen, and join us in discovering the strength that lies within every individual's journey. This is the Glum Lot Podcast, where humor meets hope. All right, so here we are, episode number 1111. And I just want to quickly remind everyone that we do have an email address now. You can email us your comments, concerns, and or ideas at theglumlotpodcast@gmail.com.
Yeah, the Glum
Yes,
Lot.
and we also have a Facebook group, the Glum Lot Podcast. Feel free to join and participate. So that being said, we are on episode number 11. Brett, what's on your mind today?
Always something on my mind.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, sorry.
Nice.
Thank you very
Yeah.
much. I don't know if you've noticed this, but I've got thin skin.
Yeah, well, most alcoholics do.
Yep, and we had a fight the other day, and boy, I felt it hard.
Who had a fight?
Us.
You and me?
Yeah, we had a fight. Yeah, we won't get into the details.
Maybe
because-
my skin's not that thin.
Oh,
I don't recall.
Mine is
us
so
having
thin.
a-
See, now I'm so upset.
Maybe I'm just a dick.
Well, yeah. So let me get into that a little bit.
Go ahead.
So, some of the things that you had said, really, like you said, it cuts, and it cut into me. And but I got to remember, I can't let other people's words define me.
I don't want to define you, sir.
Yeah. You didn't. It's just me.
Oh.
Yeah, just so you know.
Yeah,
we had a little fight, but that was not a fight in real sense.
I've had
to
that
me,
problem myself, that sometimes I think someone's fighting with me when they're not.
Right.
And I'm just viewing it as that they're fighting. Sometimes I feel slighted when I'm not slighted. And people are like, "What? No, no."
Yeah. And we have fun on here, but sometimes
We do.
Sometimes, listen, it's okay to make fun of myself, but if somebody says something about me,
Right.
it's tragic.
You're right. I get that.
Tragic.
I get
tragic.
that.
but-
I'll self-deprecate.
Oh, did you say defecate?
Yes, I'll self-defecate and not tell anybody about it. But they
That
can,
stinks.
They can smell it anyway.
Yeah, right.
So.
But what I have to remember is I am working towards a certain way, and that is a new way where I'm not so much caring what other people think about me.
And you know what the best piece of advice I've heard about that is, and I use this throughout my life, and I tell my children the same thing. What other people think of me is none of my business.
Mm-hmm.
If I'm doing the right thing for the right reason and people don't like it, then they're just going to have to not like it.
I love that.
If I'm doing something wrong and someone says something or whatever, and I need to recognize it, then I need to make amends immediately.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
And if I live my life that way, I'm going to have very few problems in that realm.
Yeah.
So.
Yep.
People say, my business ends at the end of my nose.
Yeah. Yep, I've heard that one too.
That's true, because I know, boy, you can cop a resentment. Somebody makes a remark, and you can take that for days and chew on it like a dog chewing on a bone and develop this great resentment, only to find out later they weren't even talking about you.
No, not at all.
That's not what they meant.
Yeah, and that was the case with us.
In which case it was all in your head, and it caused you all these toxic feelings for absolutely no reason.
Yeah. But don't let not your hearts be troubled. We're doing just fine.
Yeah.
It was all in my head, right?
Yeah.
And, I just had to sit for a second and take it into context to understand what he was saying. And it was, like you said, absolutely nothing about me.
Okay.
It was just me being, an alcoholic.
Well, here's me now. Now I feel bad.
Well, yeah. And that's why I brought it up on here, so
Yeah.
you could do this in front of everybody.
Okay, great. I don't really feel that bad.
No, I feel
But anyway, moving forward, we have a great guest. And the interesting thing is, I don't really know this person's story, and I don't really know them that well. So they're going to be a revelation personally to me.
Fresh.
And should be interesting. And so without further ado, let's welcome our guest, Kira.
Kira!
Sarah, welcome to the Glum Lot Podcast. We're glad to have you here.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here.
And we'll start off with your sobriety date.
Sobriety date is January 5th, 2022.
Okay. So we'd like to know a little bit about your history and how you got to the rooms. If you could just start at the very beginning. Do you remember when you took your first drink?
Yeah, I was 9 years old when I took my first drink.
Ooh, what were the circumstances surrounding that?
I was at home with my mom and her boyfriend at the time. They were drinking margaritas, and my mom asked me if I wanted one, and I said yes. So, yeah.
Wow. Whoa. Here I was. When I was a kid, I was stealing the booze from my parents.
No, I won't say it was freely offered, but
Right.
it wasn't hard to get.
Okay. So do you remember that first buzz?
No, I didn't have a first buzz. I had a first blackout. That was it.
I would imagine.
Holy
So.
Yeah.
shitballs. Okay. Well, we're going to okay. So you were little.
Yeah, when I was 9, I didn't get drunk when I was 9. My first blackout was when I was 14.
Okay. And so booze, obviously.
Yes.
Were drugs a part of your story? Pot, anything like that?
Yeah, I started smoking weed at like 16, maybe 15.
Was it mostly the people you were hanging out with that exposed you to this?
I would honestly say it was my family. It was my family
Really?
that, exposed me to the drugs and alcohol in the first place. Acquiring the drugs and alcohol I got that from people I hung out with.
Okay.
So there's history there.
I grew up in an alcoholic home. My parents were old school, but the booze was always around, and they were always drinking. It just wasn't hard to go pick something up myself.
Mostly because of Mark.
Mostly because of me. I drove them to drink. But so you're basically raised in an environment where this is being done freely, and it's not, to you probably at the time, it seems like pretty normal.
Yes.
And it's not that big of a deal.
Correct, yeah.
But very quickly you get into pretty severe usage.
I would say within the next 5 years, when I was around 18, 19, I would say that would be severe. My drinking was never normal by any means, of course. But my family it was almost glorified in a way and romanticized the drinking and things like that. I just remember I bounced around a lot. I lived with my mom. I lived with my grandparents, but I can remember my grandparents having just barbecues all of the time. And my grandmother's also an alcoholic. So I can remember very distinctly just feeling like my getting drunk, and not only getting drunk, but also the morning after was kind of like a rite of passage. It was kind of like a sense of belonging in my family.
Now, by that, you mean like the hangover?
The hangover, the stories, kind of like waking up the next morning. Like when I got drunk when I was 14. That was my first blackout. I was at my mom's house. It was my birthday, and I had some friends over. Or no, that was a different time. Sorry.
It's all a blur.
Yeah, it is. It really is. Even my first 2 years of sobriety has been a blur. So, I was 14. My mom and her husband at the time were drinking, and I was drinking. But I remember distinctly waking up. I remember blacking out. I don't remember blacking out, but I blacked out. And I remember waking up the next morning and just having a very familiar conversation with my mom and her husband at the time, kind of recalling the things that I was doing the night before, and like, oh, you were doing this, you threw up, blah, blah, blah. But it was all in this very like jokey way, and it was laughed about.
Did it also make you feel included, and as an adult, like you had come of age, you could hang with these people now, and it was okay?
Correct.
And to you at the time, did it seem pretty normal? Like,
Very.
This is a pretty normal way to grow up, And it could have been how they grew up. I don't know.
Yeah,
You know?
they definitely grew up that way.
Well, yeah, if she woke up and the family's telling the tales of everybody's debauchery, that sounds pretty...
So did you make it through high school?
I did.
Okay, you graduated high school.
Yes.
And at what point did you feel that your drinking and drugging was becoming a real issue for you?
Probably around 22. That's when I thought it was becoming a real issue. I would notice things here and there from like 19 to 22. When I was 19, after I graduated high school, I was going to community college. I was nannying. I was working at a hookah bar at the time. And that's when it kind of picked up to be this like nightly kind of, it was a lifestyle,
right.
the way that I was living it. I started doing cocaine every day to just like maintain my routine. Going to class in the morning, nannying in the afternoon, going to work until 2 o'clock in the morning, not going to sleep until 4, waking up the next morning, going to class, doing over and over and over again. So I started.
So were you doing the classic bump, like where you need a bump?
Yeah, I was doing bumps. I was doing Adderall. Then I would smoke weed when I got home from the bar, so I could go to sleep, and the whole like.
So your whole life is
maintenance.
built around this system of getting high, using drugs to go up, go down, fucked
Around.
up.
To
Yeah.
regulate, yeah, absolutely.
And so, do you still feel like this was not that abnormal?
At the time, no, I didn't.
Were you
think-
hanging out with people that used and drank the same way you did?
Yes, I will say yes and no. There was like one person that I was hanging out with that I worked with at the bar. She was a heroin user. And I just kept thinking, well, I'll never do that.
Right.
Like as
heck
long as
no.
I'm not doing that, I'm good.
Yeah. We used to do that when I was a kid. No one did heroin
Yeah.
where I was
Oh, no.
from anyway. But and then somebody started doing some coke, and this is a long time ago, obviously. And it was like, holy shit, cocaine, what? But heroin was something for junkies with a needle in their arm in the gutter, And it's evolved into this thing where it's like all over the suburbs and high schools. It's crazy. And I think people start to get into it through, a lot of times through these opiate pills, of course, and then snorting, and then eventually shooting. And, the whole thing's grown into what is now being called an epidemic. And so did you ever get to that point with the heroin? With heroin?
No, thank God I didn't, but I tried.
Yeah.
I literally tried to do heroin, which I think is insane. Because
Yeah.
who does that? My friend, the one that I was hanging out with, we would smoke weed together every once in a while, and I asked her if she would help me do heroin, and she said no.
Ah.
Yeah.
Good.
And she saved my life.
Yeah.
Wow.
She literally
Yes.
saved my life.
So you're doing this mixture of drugs. You're in your very early 20s, late teens, and you're cramming a lot of life into a 24-hour period.
Mm-hmm.
And at what point does it become what you would consider unmanageable?
Like, what things did you notice were starting to get a little crazy on you?
What things did I notice?
Were the friends starting to peel away? Some were staying because they're still hanging, but did you have any of that?
It was my relationship. It was my relationship at the time. I started dating a guy when I was like 19, 20. He was actually in AA. He had been sober for like 7 years. And he was the first one to ever like call me an alcoholic into our relationship. But just being in a relationship with him, it just started to become unmanageable in my opinion, because I could see like just my craziness coming out. And at the time, I was recently diagnosed by borderline personality disorder, and at the time, some of those behaviors, it's very much a crossover between like alcoholism and borderline personality disorder. But I was violent, I was abusive, verbally and emotionally. I was manipulative, and I started noticing stuff like that. Also, like with my friends, hanging out with my friends. There would always be like kind of like this speech before we went out, like, Kira, don't you be on that fucking shit tonight. You know what I mean? Like, don't be doing dumb
Why?
shit. You know? Yeah. I'm like, what are you talking
They
about?
had experience with your use.
Yes,
right?
yes, they
And
did.
It had not been pretty, and they wanted to make sure you did. But did it happen anyway?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah,
Yes,
yeah.
every time it happened. I swear,
Right.
my friend needed a leash for me because I would wander. I was a wanderer, so I would go and leave and go off on my own and like hang out with new people, and my friends would come look. Well, really, my one best friend, she would come looking for me, and she'd be like, "Where the fuck are you?" And I'm like, "I'm with my new friend." She's like, "Bitch, they are not your friends. Like you just met them 30 seconds ago."
Right, they are
Right?
barroom acquaintances.
Yes.
Who,
You were just
probably-
searching for truth and light.
I
That's
was
all. Yeah.
searching for other
But
people
you know
as drunk
what?
as me.
That chaos is really part of the draw for us, isn't it? You know, I remember Matt saying one of the things I miss was, for every listeners out there, episode 1, Matt Y. This is Matt Y's girlfriend. And so
there goes that.
And so Matt says, one of the things I really miss is not knowing where I'm going to end up. So we thought that was good, and we every
I think
time
he even said he missed waking up on the floor, wondering
Yeah.
what was going on, so he could hear
Yeah.
the stories from other people.
Sure. And you know what? We tend to bury in our memories the shitty things that happen. and we tend to glorify and romanticize the fun, new hookups and crazy stuff that happened that didn't hurt us. But eventually that kind of like stops happening, and it just becomes all this really dark, alone, just descent down the drain. And is that what happened to you?
Absolutely.
Can you
Yeah.
talk about that a little bit?
That part happened for me during COVID.
Mm-hmm.
I obviously couldn't go out anymore. I couldn't drink at bars and things like that. We were all home. I was home at the time working for a global corporation, but not actually working. And I would wake up, I would log on to my computer, I would turn it on, and then I would turn on YouTube videos so my computer didn't go to sleep. And I would start drinking at 7, 8 o'clock in the morning.
Did you ever just shake the mouse once in a
Yep.
while?
I had to always go check.
We are very good at what we do,
Oh,
aren't
yeah.
we?
I can definitely relate to your story
We can
there.
definitely pull off a ruse when we're using.
Yeah.
Oh.
You send a few emails like once every 3 hours to make sure you make it look like you're working.
So you're spending a lot of time alone.
Yeah, I was living with my cousin at the time and my cousin's best friend. And at that point, TikTok had like just started or just come out. So I was literally, I would sit on my porch and scroll on TikTok for hours.
Doom scrolling.
Yeah, and just drink. And then, of course, I would get the occasional, I would spam call people, chain call people, and be like, oh, I have a problem. I'm so depressed, da-da-da. But at the time, I'm attributing it to a lack of socialization, like a lack of social life.
You're blaming it on the pandemic.
Of course.
Yeah.
And everything that was going on during the pandemic. I was a huge activist. So, at the time, I've taken a step back from that now. But just like George Floyd, I was in Charlotte at the time, and there were protests going on. And so I was like, it's just the state of our nation. It's the state of the world. And I think the Big Book even says something about that. Yeah.
So you're in this really dark place. What makes you make a move?
My primary care physician actually literally, I think, saved my life. I was doing telehealth visits with her at the time. She was aware of my kind of sober, curious mindset, just my curiosity. She had brought up to me.
Can I just interrupt your second? Were you exposed to recovery at all while you were, in that funk?
No.
Or before that, anybody ever talk about rehab?
Yeah,
any of that
your
stuff?
ex-boyfriend or a guy you were seeing, you said he had a little bit of AA, right?
He did, yeah. So that's not true. Yeah, I was
Did
exposed.
he try to turn you on to that, or
No, never.
Okay.
No,
All right.
he was very much of
whatever you want to do, you do.
yeah,
You
yeah.
do you.
He
Can't
knew I had
control
to
it.
come to the He had to come to.
So
the
I'm sorry, I interrupted
realization
you, but
myself.
you were talking to your physician.
And I'll backtrack a little bit. I won't say I was exposed to recovery, but there had been at least 2 interventions by this point, family interventions at this point. So
The same family that was
yes.
really?
Yeah.
So
So
it
you
must have
must-
been so bad.
Right.
Oh, I was pissed. I blocked them all. I didn't talk to them for
Well, I mean,
2
you
months.
must have really been an all-star to have,
Oh, yeah,
to have
pro
the
level.
people who are using with you say, wait a minute. I mean, we all do this, but she's taking it to another level.
Yeah.
So you were in danger, obviously.
I was. I put
And
myself in a lot of
your
dangerous
family was
situations.
afraid for you and tried to intervene, and
Yeah.
you weren't having it.
No.
Just like on the TV show Intervention.
Yes.
You were not having it. Okay, so you've been through that, and now you're on the telehealth visits with your physician. And what is she saying to you?
She had asked me, she was following up about conversations we had previously had about me trying to stop drinking. We'd kind of made this agreement, and she was like, well, why don't you just try only drinking 3 days a week, and we'll see where we go from there. And I think she knew what she was doing. She knew I wasn't going to be able to do it,
Right.
So I confessed to her that I wasn't going to be able to do it, and she said, all right, I want you to get off this call with me, call your insurance company, and get into rehab today. And for whatever reason, I said, okay.
What made you be so honest with your physician? Because not this guy. I was 1 or 2 a week, only if somebody asked me.
She really opened the door and cultivated a very trusting relationship.
Yeah.
She put a lot of time and care and energy and effort into me as a person. And I just felt like I could be vulnerable with her. I felt like I could be honest with her. I never once felt judged by her. She went out of her way to also help me seek alternative kind of solutions to some other problems. She was very honest with me about medications, and these aren't. she would tell me like there's more than one way to skin a cat. Like, why don't you try
big
this?
Person in your life.
She's huge. She was huge. I wish I could find her. I did message her once and just tell her like, thank you. Like, you literally saved my life.
So was this like a random connection through some kind of telehealth service?
No, she was my actual primary care physician at the time, and then during COVID, we just moved to telehealth.
So she tells you, you really need to go to rehab, and do you follow through?
I did, yeah. I went to rehab that day.
Wow. 28 day or
90 days.
90 days.
90 days. No, it was in another state.
Okay, so you go out to rehab. What was your experience like there?
It was interesting because it was in the middle of COVID. So I got there, and of course, on the way there, I'm like, I need to stop at a bar. I need to get super drunk. You know what I mean? Because I'm about to
get prepared.
Yeah, go to rehab for 28 days. And in my mind at the time, I had no intention of stopping drinking, like forever. I was just like, I'm not going to be drinking for an entire month. I need to get hammered. I didn't, though, for whatever reason. I drove myself there, pulled into the parking lot, called my mom, and I'm sobbing, and I'm like, I don't want to do this. Wow. But I walked in. And my experience there, I did the 5 or 7 days or whatever in detox. That was a little wild. And then I went to a very beautiful facility in the Smoky Mountains at the top of a mountain somewhere. I had like this my own little apartment with a little kitchen and a room and a bathroom. Everything was all in one place, right? It was heaven. It was great. Exactly.
Sounds like a vacation.
It was. That's exactly how I felt.
But you're there in rehab, and you're going through the intensive experiences that rehab tries to get you to go through, which is all the self-examination and learning about your disease and all that stuff. Did that have an impact on you? It
did. It had an impact because at the very least it planted a seed. And during rehab, I actually had a pretty big spiritual experience where we were watching this movie, and I don't know, I forgot what it's called, but it's based off of some like religious band, or what are they called? Christian band? I think it's called Mercy Me. Mercy Me.
Kind of like a worship band.
Sure, yeah.
That is one. Mercy Me is one.
Yeah, so it was based on that. I forgot what the movie's called, but it's basically at the end of the movie, like this guy ends up forgiving his father who like beat the shit out of him because of God. And I was like, I broke down. And that's when, to me, like, I don't do God with a capital G. That's not my personal thing. I think it's all kind of like mixed in and intertwined. But I just realized that I was like, oh shit, like God is just love. Like, holy fuck. And I was like, oh my God. And I broke down in rehab. We also did some character defects work. I did some trauma work in rehab. And at this time in rehab, I refused to do the 12 steps. I wanted to do smart recovery. So I didn't do any step work in rehab. So there was options? Yeah.
I don't know what smart recovery is.
I don't either.
It's like a more evidence-based, science-based approach to recovery. They kind of ask you like self-reflective questions and have you like make lists of like your triggers and it's a very like intentional kind of like navigational path through recovery of like if this then that. You know what I mean?
Okay. So it tries to get you to see logically.
Yes.
Does that smart-based recovery, does it have anything to do with spirituality at all or no? Okay, so it is a non-spiritual examination.
Yeah. I would say it has there are spiritual aspects to it because of meditation, but other than that, yeah, I was completely turned off to AA because of God at the time.
Okay. Well, a lot of people are. You're not alone. So you go through the smart recovery, and it did you some good?
I would say, yeah, it did. It didn't stick, but it did me some good.
So you get out of the rehab, and you still stay for 60 days, right? Sober living? Or
I stayed in the actual facility for 90 days total.
So you get out after 90 days. Did you have a plan coming out?
I did. I worked a plan with my therapist in the facility. Did not stick to I didn't stick to all of the plan. I literally, on my way home, since I drove myself, on my way home, I stopped and picked up weed before I even went to go see my family.
Of course.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So you're going to be on the marijuana maintenance program.
I was.
California sobriety, as I've heard it called. And you start smoking weed, and you get home, and how soon did you start drinking?
I would say days. It was a matter of days before I was hiding bottles under my bed again.
Oh,
Okay.
you were a hider even.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I just spent I was living with my grandparents at the time. I just spent 90 fucking days in rehab, and like I was like, I don't want to be walking around. They're gonna be like, "What was this for? Like, what did you go for?" You know.
So. But was it different now? Now that you spent that time and you did the self-examination, you went through some kind of a program. Did you feel differently about drinking? Did it make you feel like, why am I doing this to myself? Did you have any of that self-reflection?
I did, and it was also different in the fact that I'd never hidden my use before. I was very open. I was very kind of like, this is me. This is take it or leave it, basically. My family would make comments on my drinking and stuff, and I just didn't give a fuck. And this was the first time that I was like hiding bottles under my bed. So there was that, because, you know, the whole like head full of AA, belly full of beer, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
So I truly thought, because we did this very intensive character defects, like trauma work and rehab, I left rehab thinking, oh, now I know what makes me tick. Now I know why I drink. So now I can drink safely.
But yet you're drinking.
Yeah.
And so that conflict, it's got to be hell.
Yeah.
Right? Because you can't stop drinking, but you also have in your head, this is why I do, and this is why I shouldn't, and this is what happens. But that's still going down the throat.
It wasn't hell because I was so delusional about my drinking that I had a justification for everything.
Yeah. So the denial was working 100%.
Oh yeah, I was in denial's grips hard.
And so how long did this go on for?
This went on for, let's see, I got out of rehab in April, and then I moved here in May, and then of 2021. And then my sobriety date is January 2022. So another,
so you got like another 7 or 8 months. And so what developed during this period? It is a progressive disease. Did you see it progressing?
I did. Once I moved and I was out of my active addiction city, like I said, I'm from the South. I moved somewhere north. I moved up here, and my little get drunk and go make friends at the bar thing did not work because y'all are different. Like, y'all don't want to make friends with random. I would go up to random people on the street. I would go up to random people in the bar to be like, hey. I'd be trying to party with people.
Who are you?
Yeah, exactly. Everybody gave me the cold shoulder. They were like, this bitch is crazy.
Why do you want to know about me?
But so in the South, it's not like that.
No.
Oh,
people
heck
are
no.
very open and friendly.
Very friendly.
Yeah,
Yeah.
here they're a little more cold and
I loved
standoffish.
it.
Yeah, very
Yeah,
reserved.
Brett lived
I did 10 years in
Georgia for a while.
Atlanta.
Oh, yeah?
North Atlanta.
So you know. Yeah.
I know.
Yeah.
So you're going through this 10 months of a head full of recovery and a belly full of booze or whatever else you're doing. And what happens?
I start drinking every day at home alone. At the time, I'm living with my uncle. He's seeing it. He's kind of calling me out on some stuff. I just remember like shaking my leg, like just kind of bouncing. So anxious to get out of work to go home and drink. At this point, I got my spots, the people know me in the stores, and it's just a very sad, dark, lonely, depressing time. I'm also, again, being from the South, I moved here in May, and then all summer I basically drank alone, and then winter hits. And I've never experienced a winter like this before in my life. It was so sad and cold and gray and gloomy. So that contributed.
So you've got a little seasonal affective disorder, we call it up here.
Yeah.
And you're going downhill. It's getting dark. You're very alone. You know what's going on.
Yeah. All the while I'm visiting AA. I'm just
are you?
Yes.
So you're going to meetings once in a while.
Once in a while.
How'd that get started?
From rehab,
okay.
from going to rehab.
But on your own accord? You just,
yeah. I reached out. I would do like Zoom meetings, and I'd be drinking on the Zoom meetings.
Oh, yeah.
I would visit a couple meetings in person, ones I could walk to because I wasn't driving at the time. And then I ended up going back to rehab in October of 2021.
You did? Okay.
I did.
It's funny, but when you're that position that you were in, it tears us apart because we know. And we feel like we should do something about it, but we can't. And that's truly the powerlessness. And the funny thing is, like, you're powerless. This alcohol has so much power over you. It's making you do everything you don't want to do. And I know for myself, what would happen to me when I was in your position was I owned a business, and I would go to work, and I would say, today is the day I'm not going to drink. I'm not going to drink just for this day. And by around noon, I was like you with the bouncing knee, and I would start to need basically a fix of alcohol. And by 3 or 4 o'clock, I wouldn't be able to stop thinking about it. And I would get in my car to drive home at 5. And I would have, if you had asked me, was I going to drink that day, I would say there's no way in hell. And I would pass a lie detector test because I 100% genuinely meant that. But on the drive home, the alcoholic thinking would kick in, and I would have no choice but to turn the car into the bar for happy hour, telling myself I would just have one drink. And then a couple hours later, when I was completely fucked up, I would leave and go, how did this happen?
Yeah.
You know?
And I can feel that I'm with you on this depression thing. This is the first time that we've had somebody that's really opened up about the big time, like being alone and stuff. And COVID was that for me. You know, even working out of the house, same thing. So, yeah, I get it because you come up with that, you're not going to drink. But as the day goes on, man, I get more in my head and more alone. And then I do it, and then I'm just like, I'm so worthless, right? And then I just rotted in bed for weeks because of that.
So you get the second chance at rehab.
Yes. I'm still holding strong to the idea that I'm never going to stop smoking weed. And I'm telling all the counselors that and everything. I ended up only staying for like 19 days because I had a family emergency. So I leave. I get back to Syracuse, and I'm still smoking weed. I'm on the marijuana maintenance program. And then I go home for Christmas to visit my family. And what happened is I'd rolled this fat blunt that I planned on. Yeah, it was fat. It was big. And I planned on smoking it before I got on the plane to come back to Syracuse. I woke up late, didn't have time to smoke. So I get to the airport, and I end up taking 4 double shots of vodka before I get on the plane because I didn't get to smoke. And then I get home. At this time, I do actually have a sponsor in AA, which is weird, but I can get into that later. I text my sponsor, and I'm like, I drank, and she's like, all right, well, don't do that. And I was like, well, I'm gonna go get 2 more bottles. So I did. I went and got a bottle of rum. Yeah. I went and got a bottle of rum, a bottle of tequila. I texted this guy who I knew had access to dry goods. And I finished both the bottle of rum, the bottle of tequila by myself. He came over at some point, but I don't really remember. Yeah, I don't remember. Because I knew.
Well,
he
no,
had
why
Molly.
don't you remember?
Yeah.
Holy cow.
And that was my last drunk. That was January 4th, 2022. I was up all night throwing up. I had ended up texting my sponsor and my grand sponsor and putting them both in a group chat, and I told them both to go fuck themselves and that they weren't only doing this to like placate their own egos and they were only trying to help me. I just went off.
So you were
all about self.
Yeah.
You were out there.
Yeah, it was bad.
You were destroying yourself.
I was.
And you were going to destroy every relationship on the way out with, fuck you guys.
Yeah.
And so you wake up the next day and you feel like shit. And what changed?
Well, I guess I came to, really. I was up all night throwing up. So I woke up the next morning. Yeah, I came to the next morning. And I guess I was just done. I texted someone else that I'd known in AA and kind of told her what happened. I might have called her. I don't remember. And she was like, all right, well, I'll come get you for a meeting at 5:30. Like, just don't drink until then. I don't know if I did like Zooms or whatever in the middle of it. I probably just slept until like 5:30 until she came to pick me up. But we ended up going to a meeting at 5:30 and then another meeting at 7:30.
Did you raise your hand and say, I'm coming back? And
Yeah, I did. I remember
Nice.
telling people what happened and telling people, what happened. And then from that point forward, I ended up asking the woman who came to get me for the meeting at 5:30 to be my next sponsor, because obviously the sponsor that I told to go fuck herself had to
Left
drop
him
me
in the
after
dust.
that.
she actually did.
Yeah.
Okay, so you burned that bridge.
Yeah.
So you pick up this new sponsor, but something in you has changed.
Yeah. I guess I was tired. I was tired. I was exhausted. I didn't recognize who I was anymore. And I just got to this place of like, fuck it. Like, whatever. I'm here. No harm is going to come from me getting sober. It was scary as shit. I didn't have any idea what I was doing. But I guess at the time, I just trusted the people who had been there. They said that they felt like me. I didn't believe that. They said that they had been where I was, and I was like, yeah, okay, but do you really get it, though? Do you really get it? I was very big otherer, very big, different, big on making myself different. But I just listened, even though I wasn't fully invested or didn't truly or fully believe that what they were telling me was going to work.
If we're very fortunate, this disease beats us into submission. If we're fortunate. There's a lot of people, they just never get to that point. They hang on until it actually kills them.
Yeah.
So, it was the same thing for me. It put me in such a dark place, and I still wasn't done. And I had to go out, and I had to come back, and I had to go out, and I had to come back. And I did that 6 times over a very short period of time. And, all it was is I needed to get beat up a little more for some reason. And I don't know, if somebody said, how many more times are you going to go out? I would say, I don't plan on going out at all. But something happened where I knew enough and I didn't want to experience this anymore. And I was so fortunate that existed for me, because for a lot of people it just doesn't, And so you come back, you get a new sponsor, you start going to some meetings, you take the program more seriously. Do you feel like you can do this time?
I feel like, yes. I guess I was feeling like I could do it. I just wasn't fully resigned to the fact that I wanted to do it. And I spent my entire life never doing anything I didn't want to do. So that was a very big difference. That was a very big change. And I do want to backtrack a little bit and say that when I moved to Syracuse in May, I actually started going to AA in August. I got involved with a group that was very involved and had a high level of accountability. So really from August to January, I was going to meetings pretty consistently, but still drinking. But I was honest about it the entire time. I would show up to meetings high. I would show up to meetings drunk. I would always drink a 9% beer before I went to any meeting. So I'm like, well, I got to drink to get through this meeting. And that's so from August to January is when I had that first sponsor. I couldn't find a sponsor for a while because I was being honest and telling people I'm not done drinking, and nobody would sponsor me. But this one lady, I told her I can't find a sponsor. She asked me if I had a sponsor. I said I can't find anybody to sponsor me because I'm not willing to stop drinking yet. I don't want to stop drinking. And she said, well, I'll sponsor you even while you're drinking. And that probably saved my life also.
Yeah. I what I always say, too, is that the people who are successful are people that keep coming back. So keep coming back no matter what. Yeah. You drink, you come back. You fall down, you get up, you come back, And so that seems to be the difference maker. So you meet this new sponsor. Are things different?
No, they're very much the same. The things that I'm being told to do aren't different. I think obviously my level of willingness has increased at this point, and I'm actually willing to do the things, because the previous sponsor, she'd tell me to do stuff and I'd be like, okay, fuck that, I'm not doing that. But this time I did, if I'm being honest, probably 65% of the things.
So your willingness is going more in the right direction.
Yes.
You haven't surrendered.
No.
There's progress.
Okay.
Not perfection,
right.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I started doing this stuff, and I can very distinctly remember waking up on January 6th, the next morning after I didn't drink, and I was in disbelief. I was shocked that I had gone to sleep without putting any substances in my body. I could not believe it, and I was like, oh shit, okay, I can do this again today. I can do this again one more day.
Yeah.
And yeah, I've been sober ever since.
One day at a time, right?
Yeah.
It's literally one day at a time.
Mm-hmm.
So how have you stayed sober?
Well, I've stayed sober by being rigorously honest. I will say that, and saying when I wanted to drink, saying out loud that I think this is bullshit and I think that's bullshit. I don't agree with this, but I'm going to do it anyway. But I just want you to know that I think it's bullshit.
Sounds like somebody we know.
I just want it on record that I don't agree with this.
It's
right?
not, and that's not uncommon.
No.
What's even more uncommon, though, is you saying that.
Right.
Because most people think it, they don't verbalize it.
Oh.
They're not going to tell because they don't want to argue about it. So they're like, yeah, with me, with the God thing, I'm like, yeah, okay, whatever. It took me a while. You know, it takes people sometimes years. Some people walk in and they're there. You know, not me. But it's the same thing with the fourth and fifth. A lot of people 1, 2, 3 out, 1, 2, 3 out. They're not going to do that. They're not going to write anything down. They're not going to talk about it. That's not what they're there for. They're there to not drink, and they don't feel like this is a part of it. So have you gone through the steps since?
No.
So you're not really working the steps.
No, but that's not my fault.
Okay, all right.
Right.
Hey.
I can honestly say that is not my fault. So the group that I got involved with, they take the steps extremely slowly. I am 2 years sober and I haven't done any steps. I just recently got a new sponsor and we're doing step work.
Fantastic.
And she's very much of like, she's like, I'm pretty sure you're at 3. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like we can just knock these out as kind of
Okay.
like a formality. But I did things on a daily basis, like talk to another alcoholic, go to a meeting, pray, meditate, and talk to my sponsor. Those were the 5 things that I did every day for the past 2 years that have kept me sober.
Yeah, you know, no one does the program perfectly, and everybody does it a little bit differently. And there are a lot of suggestions, and you know, it's all in the book. But I don't know of anybody that serves every single page in that book to a letter. So,
Well, I mean, speak for yourself.
except Brett, of course, 'cause
Right,
he's
yeah.
perfect.
And maybe Matt.
Yeah,
Whoa.
no, I can tell you right now.
Boy, I think we need to have another session here to
But,
tell you.
know something?
Anyway.
We all do it together.
Yeah.
We all walk the path a little bit differently, but if it works, then that's good. You know, we know we're doing something that's right, and we're not afraid to think that someday I may change. You know,
Right.
So because that's part of the whole program is just changing, and the catalyst to that can be more pain through doing things not drinking, just behaviors that you want to change or character defects that you decide you want to tackle. You know, the nice thing about the steps is they're pretty concise and they're pretty compartmentalized, that you do them in order, and as you do each step, change comes and you realize things. And
growth.
Right. And you know what? To me, that growth doesn't happen immediately as you do the step. It takes practice over years and years and years, and I'm still working them all. I still work them all every day. Not the same one, but, you know, I'll bounce back and forth constantly because, you know, it
Well,
really
it's a program for life.
practicing these principles in all our affairs, you know. And so it's challenging because I'm a human being and life is challenging, you know. You know, your story is fascinating, and the whole step thing, you know, if you do the steps honestly, open, and willing, I think you're going to get so much out of it.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, only not that you haven't actually been doing them anyway. We just haven't been formalized. You know what I'm saying? But that's where a lot of the change comes. And when people come into AA, all they want to do is feel better, and then they want to just stop drinking, and then they want some serenity in their life, and then they start to get a taste of change and spiritual experiences, and they want more of that. So if people stick around long enough, people, you know, we always say, don't leave before the miracle happens, you know. And, you know, in your case, boy, you're a real hardcore, what our friend Mike R would call a cement head. It's like, I'm going to do
Certified.
this. I see what you people are doing. I'm not doing that.
Yes.
I'm going to do something like that. I'm going to do something that I want to do that works for me. That's a hard way to get sober, but if you do it and it works, it's really good. You know what I mean? Because it's more of a battle than just falling in line.
Yeah. And that was the biggest thing, is like the falling in line piece. I had such a hard time with the word surrender. I could not get past it. And when I would read the 12 and 12 and read step 1 and the 12 and 12, I would literally cringe at the words complete defeat. I could not, and I still can't get past it. I just talked to my sponsor last week, and I said I'm not going to concede to hopelessness because I've never felt that way. I've never felt hopeless. So it's hard for me to get past. I definitely think, like, I don't know, a lot comes into it, especially with the group that I was in specifically. It's difficult. I'm still processing a lot of that's happened, and I'm still trying to kind of reconcile these feelings within myself. Because you're right, I have been practicing the steps, just not formally. You know, I've sponsored people in the past 2 years. I have taken a look at my day. I've reviewed my day at night. I've had periods of time where I've done that. And I did want more after. When I first came in here, and I just wanted to stop drinking, and that was it. And then I got disgusted with myself not drinking, Like, I was like, ew, these behaviors are not attractive, like, at all. I don't like this.
Yeah, that's why it's more than putting the drink down, So we really appreciate you coming in and talking to us today. We're at the end of our time, but you've been a great guest. And to everybody out there in the Glum Lot community, please tell people about the podcast and spread the word. And I'm Mark.
And I'm Brett.
I'm Kira.
As we wrap up another episode of the Glum Lot Podcast, we want to extend our heartfelt gratitude to each and every one of you who tuned in today. Navigating the path to recovery from alcohol and other substances is a journey filled with challenges, triumphs, and self-discovery. Remember, we're not affiliated with Alcoholics Anonymous, but we're here to provide a safe space for open conversations about the complexities of recovery. Your stories, courage, and resilience inspire us and our listeners alike. If you or someone you know is on the transformative journey, know that you're not alone. Join us next time as we continue to explore the diverse facets of recovery. Until then, stay strong, stay connected, and remember that each day is a step towards a brighter, sober tomorrow. Thank you for being part of the Glum Lot community.